You've just been traveling for several hours, I guess 4 hours, is it? 2 hours. And here we are, sitting quietly for a moment. Listening to what is coming, a talk or something. Can we talk right at the beginning about listening? Most of you are students at a university. And a certain kind of listening goes on during all of your lectures. Usually, I don't know how it is now, it used to be this way. When I went to school, listening and writing notes about what the professor said. Writing notes so that one would commit to memory what one had heard, go over it later, maybe over and over and over it the night before an exam. So one could repeat from memory what one had heard during the lecture. In listening to a lecture already, the brain working to formulate in a brief way the gist of what one thinks one is hearing in order to remember it and give it back upon request. Does it describe pretty much how you listen to a lecture? Now here we're asking whether there can be an entirely different kind of listening. Not writing as one is listening, to take notes, to remember, and even if not writing, not listen to remember something, because one will be asked about it on an exam. Maybe you will be asked on an exam, but you're not taking a course, are you? This is not part of a course requirement. We're talking a lot about how this mind and body function in our relationship with each other. And when we're alone, thinking about our relationship with each other, thinking about ourselves. We're talking and looking at the same time at how this mind and body operate from moment to moment. And we're asking whether in listening to a talk such as this, it's possible to listen openly, to see whether what is said is really so by looking within oneself. Talk may be about self-image, which we all have, and the tremendous power of our self-images. Power to affect our behavior, our thinking, our relationship. And in talking about self-image, for instance, can one look at self-image within oneself? Not just taking what one person who's got a microphone in front of her is saying and believing what she says because she may be an authority on what she says, or else she wouldn't be sitting in front of a microphone. Not taking it on authority, but questioning what is being said for oneself, whether it is so or not. We're not used to that. We've been trained to accept what someone who has a place of authority says. We're trained to accept that, to follow it, to remember it, to make it part of ourselves without testing whether it is really so, what this person says. Or you could say in mathematics or in biology, chemistry. Yeah, in chemistry, biology, math, you can also test whether what is said is so. But in here, in talking about oneself, don't accept anything. But wonder and look whether one can find out for oneself how one thinks, emotes, feels, relates, the blockages in relationship, the anxieties that come up, the wanting, the contradictions, wanting to do something and doing something entirely different from what one wants to do, saying one thing and doing another thing. Can there be the beginning of an inward-looking, questioning, listening, which is non-judgmental, not judging inner contradictions or problems or anxiety or anger, not judging it as bad or wrong, but seeing it, coming in touch with it directly without the blockage of judgment. Or the immediate thought, it mustn't be so, I have to be different, I have to overcome what I see. Or I have a right to be the way I am. The moment these inner headlines start popping up in the mind, we don't see anymore, we're just going by what we think about what is going on. So is it possible this morning during the talk, during question periods, during a short period of sitting, eating or talking informally to each other, to have here and there a spark of awareness of what is actually going on? Finding out directly, not just living in thoughts and images about oneself, which is what we do most of the time. As one looks at what is happening in what we call the world right now. I watched a newscast last night and looked into Newsweek. There seems to be no end of violence in our relationship with each other, as individuals, as countries or tribes, religious sects or groups locked in deadly battle with each other, be it in Europe, Asia, Africa, anywhere, Asia, South Asia, Ceylon, wherever one looks, human beings are locked in battle, in deadly battle with each other. Over what? Why are we fighting each other? Why are we killing each other? Kidnapping each other? Colluding against each other, trying to get allies to help us fight each other. Why are we so totally divided all over the world with each other, in our relationship with each other. Even though we're all human beings, all share the same anatomy, physiology, evolutionary development of our organism, of our brain, share pretty much, except for individual differences, share the same psychological makeup. All of us being born of parents as helpless babies, not able to take care of ourselves, depending on an adult to take care of us, and in our helplessness, completely open to conditioning by what this person wants us to do, how the person wants us to behave. We share all of that. It's not an individual matter. We've all been conditioned in our helplessness as babies, conditioned through reward and punishment to behave in certain ways. These ways may differ in form from one continent or one country to another, but we're all conditioned. In that we're all alike. We're all conditioned by fear of being abandoned or not liked or loved by the adults upon whom we depend. Are you looking? Do you see whether this is so or not? Don't take my word for it. Look at it yourself. Be in touch with what is going on as we're talking about it. We're all conditioned by fear and wanting. Always wanting something. If one begins to observe very carefully, maybe while sitting still for a period of time, every once in a while or regularly, one may come in touch with this amazing fact that at practically every moment we want something. There is wanting. Wanting to be quiet if we sit quietly, not wanting to have all the thoughts that are there, wanting to be a better person, wanting more relationship, different relationship, success in our school, success in our career, wanting more power in the group, more prestige, wanting to be something to an imagined or real audience, wanting to be admired, or there may not be an audience, but the mind can create it. One can see oneself being admired even though there's no person around. So all of us human beings are conditioned by fear of no relationship. The mother, father may not be there. Fear of not getting our food, our sustenance and nourishment. Fear of not being liked by the other kids or teachers. Fear of not being somebody where everybody else seems to be something special or important, wanting to be important. Or if one suddenly gets the idea that this is immoral, then one wants to become unimportant. Wanting to advance one's feelings of self, aggrandize the feelings of self, or wanting to efface the self. But always wanting something to eat, something to do, something to stimulate one. Or wanting peace and quiet. Enough of stimulation, now I want rest. The mind keeps going, the body keeps agitating, and one wants something different. Do you see that? Are you watching it? So, these are just a few examples in which human beings are all alike, all over the world. Wanting to follow authority, wanting to belong to something greater than oneself so one may feel protected and taken care of. Family may not serve this purpose, so one joins a party, a political party, or may already have been a member of a church and one is identified with the grandeur of this religious tradition that one has been born into, raised in, or one may change this church for another religious group, another religious tradition. Wanting to be taken care of by the group, protected through a feeling of belonging, and wanting to follow someone who says, I know the truth, I know what is the right thing, and just believe my words, remember the book, read in the Holy Scriptures, and follow the book or follow the religious leader, the priest or minister or guru. In looking at whatever is presented to us through newscasts, books, or magazines, there is following of authority everywhere in this world. There's no place where it is not. Following political, ideological, religious authority. And the protection one feels one gets through this following, not just protection, but feeling aggrandized if it is a powerful nation, a powerful ideology, a powerful religious tradition, sort of basking in the power that one gets by associating with it, being part of it, being identified with it. You can say, well, what is the harm in that? What's wrong with it? We do need protection. We do need to feel to belong. We do need to follow something. We're questioning this. We're questioning it here. On the surface and very deeply, whether there can be, first of all, awareness of this incessant wanting something and how this wanting expresses itself. And questioning that. If whatever group one belongs to, one wants to be the best, doesn't one? One wants to belong to the most powerful, to the most truthful, the most righteous group. One wants one's own country to be tops in the world. One is indoctrinated that way. I was amazed hearing the parting speech of our past president, admonishing children to have their parents tell them about America, tell them about patriotism. He said, nail them if they don't tell you about it. Be patriots, which means what? What does it mean to be a patriot? To have a passion for one's country being tops, being the best, being superior to all other countries. What does it mean? Well, how does it manifest? What does it do psychologically in ourselves, in our relationship with each other? It leads to division, doesn't it? If I feel I belong to the best, then obviously I have to look down on every other. Not I have to, but I do. mine is the best, the other is inferior. And if there's any encroachment, if I feel any encroachment upon the territory of my group, physical territory or psychological territory, this is my belief, my ideology, my country, my religion. If you attack it or downgrade it, then I will defend it and fight. Because very often with the allegiance to national, ideological or religious organization goes a vow, maybe an unspoken vow, maybe a spoken vow to defend it against outsiders who may encroach or offend, to defend, to give one's life for this allegiance, so that the ideology, the country, the religious tradition may survive. I give my life. And that's what's going on throughout this world. Northern Ireland, South Africa, just to give two examples. Lebanon is untold, endless conflagration. And of course, the whole sheer everlasting conflict between Palestinians and Jews. It's all my country, my faith, my homeland, my God versus yours. Why do we continue doing this? Why is there no understanding of this? And if one is plagued with this question, really deeply concerned with it, can one begin by looking into oneself? Not just see the problem out there in foreign countries, which seem to have their endless problems, but looking into oneself and wondering whether or not very, very similar problems take place in oneself and in one's relationship with one's closest friends, teachers, parents, groups that one is attached to or in conflict with. Will one look? Will one examine this? Test it out in the laboratory, which is oneself? We started on the large global level, looking at the attachment to the image of my country, my ideology, or my religion. But within oneself, is there attachment to images of oneself? What one would like to be or believes one is? Good-looking, smart, skillful, intelligent, the best or better than others. Or the flip side of the image, the negative image, being no good, not as good as others, unskillful, clumsy. You could say, well, I'm not attached to a negative image. I'm only attached to positive images about myself, but one has to question that. Because we can't let go of the negative image of ourselves, that we are unskillful or not intelligent, not as good as someone else, or not lovable. We cling to those ideas. We can't let go of them. If there was no attachment, we would be free of this image and would find out right now how we're relating. Not on the basis of the idea that I'm not lovable or have never had success in relationship. If that image sits in the mind, glued there as the truth, this is how I am, then we cannot relate freely with each other, because it's the image of myself that relates, the image of not being as good or good-looking or likable or popular as you are. And therefore already an inhibition. That's right, isn't it? And if I'm very much taken with the image of myself, how popular I am, good-looking and better in my grades than everybody else, can I really listen to you? Who may be shy, withdrawn, or inferior feeling, can I listen to that and sort of be in touch with that? Or will I just want any relationship to feed more of this self-image of myself? Actually, also when we have this negative image, we also look to feed it, because we always want to be right in what we cling to. We want confirmation of what we think we are and what others are. Want to feel that we are right, that we have the right idea about ourselves and each other. And with that want to be right, how can we find out what's true right now about each other? Not based on past images which have been instilled in us through parents, teachers, siblings, or all the conglomerate of influences that have made us believe we are what we think we are. Is it possible to be free of that and have a moment of fresh relationship which is free of this past, good images, bad images, not attached to it? The image may come up, but one sees it's an image. And what am I? Just images? Just memories? Past experiences? Past indoctrinations? What past authorities have told me I am? Is that what I am? What am I? When I don't go on faith that all of that is the truth, all of the ideas and past memories is the truth, when I start from scratch, listening to the birds, listening to you, looking at you, looking within, attentive and open to find out. Not in the safety of pre-established ideas, which is no real safety, because we're killing each other over pre-established ideas. Not in the pseudo-safety of past experiences and ideas, but in the vulnerability and openness of discovering now what we are right now and everything else around us. And that needs this listening, this open listening we talked about at the very beginning. Listening without prejudice. Is it possible to listen to each other, to what someone says, and to what goes on within oneself? Listening without prejudice, without prejudging. What am I? What are you when there's no prejudice? Based on what I know from the past. Seeing that that is memory and that does not apply. It's irrelevant right now in meeting each other. I want to find out about you and me without prejudice. Which means one comes in touch with this mountain of prejudice that we have about ourselves and each other, and can that be seen just for what it is, not judged as bad or false or wrong or right, but seen for the blockage it constitutes in our relationship. If I have prejudice against you, I only see you as prejudice, as prejudged idea. I don't see you. I only see my cartoon-like ideas about you. Cartoon being an abstraction of certain features, not the whole thing, not the whole person, only the big nose or the big mouth, or the little hair, the violent expression or the dumb expression. But what are we as a whole? As a whole human being, living in a whole world of a whole humankind. What are we? The call of the bird and the sound in the kitchen are not separate from that. They're there, aren't they? One may wonder what kind of a bird is it? Is it a blue jay or a cardinal? But this is scanning of knowledge in the computer. The gee, 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 gee. That's not knowledge. That's happening right now. So can one see the difference between the word blue jay, the idea of a bird, the word bird call, and what's actually there? So again, can there be, for moments at a time, an open listening or awareness which is completely without prejudice or positive or negative image? Just the openness of finding out what's really there before I know about it or put all my knowledge on top of it. Later on, we have a period of 20 minutes maybe of sitting quietly. Can one listen out of quietness to all the internal and external sounds? Listening out of quietness meaning listening without prejudice. Without this is good or bad, right or wrong. The breathing is not good or bad, it's what is it? If I listen to it for the first time, and the sound of the bird, not separate from the breathing if I don't label it and react to it. Feelings in the shoulder, knees, on the seat or on the back, the hands, the heartbeat, the breath. Not calling it breath, because the word breath is not what's going on. What is going on? I have to listen, feel it. Different sounds throughout the house, the bird call, the breathing, feelings in the knee or shoulder, and thoughts coming up. What is this all about? I don't know what she's talking about. Listening to those thoughts without prejudice. in this listening, a new world opens, which is not the world of thought and idea in which we constantly find ourselves imprisoned. But looking and listening and shedding light on the prison of words and thoughts and prejudice, which keep us imprisoned. A moment of listening without prejudice, that's not imprisonment. What is it? We're just a small circle of people. I hope people will feel free to ask questions that they have. Not worry about how you put them or formulate them. But if you wish to ask something, to start out, and we'll find out what it is that the question is all about and see whether we can talk about it. The question may be related to the talk that was just given, or you may have brought a question that you want to ask.
Yes, I've got a question. You said you talked about self-images, and somehow even if one doesn't cling to, if one succeeds not to cling to one's own self-image, one is fed by others.
By others meaning what?
That other people give you ideas about what you are. And what do you do about that?
What do you do about it? You say, supposing I was not attached to an image that I do have of myself, but I'm not attached to it. I see the image, but I see the danger of image and the divisiveness of it, that it separates me from myself and from others, so I will not be influenced by this image. I'll listen freshly, and the first person I listen to, I can tell has an image of me. What do I do? What do you do? Let's look at it. It's everyone's question. I may be relatively free of the self-image, but I can tell, and the more free I am from the influence of self-image, the more I can tell the image is projected onto me. What do I do? The training, our conditioning says, tell that person to stop having an image of me. But are you thinking that way? Does that thought come up? It would be nice to tell this person, look, drop it. I've dropped it. Why can't you? But a person may say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have an image of you. I see you. You are like that. You've been like this all the time. So can one listen right then and there to someone having an image, a strong image? You can tell the person projects onto you that you're right or wrong, good or bad. You don't have to become that. You don't have to live up to that image. We used to do that when we were little. We wanted to be in the good graces of our parents, and if they told us what a good girl does, we did what a good girl does in order that our parents like us. We're surrounded by this, and we're contributing to it unless we see it. Constantly contribute to the stream of images about ourselves and each other. And you see that, you can tell us at this moment. What will you do? You don't want to contribute to stream of image making. Can you see what's going on? And not contribute, not be influenced by what someone thinks about you?
That's the thing, that even if I, because I'm remembering something that happened to me, even if I see clearly what's happening, that I'm still hurt and that I'm still influenced.
What do you mean by still?
Yeah, that I see that it's not really my problem, but the other person's projection. And I felt hurt by the injustice of that.
Which is what? You feel hurt by the injustice of what?
Of being labeled in the wrong way.
Why do you feel hurt over this? Someone labels you, it's not fair because you're not like that. But why do you have to be hurt over? What gets hurt? Let us take the case you said that you have no image of yourself. Would there be anything to get hurt? Have no image of yourself as being other than what this person says. Then the person says, you're this way. What is there to get hurt if you're not clinging to an image of yourself? Or is it that this person saying something unfair and unjust to you or about you to others that immediately hooks into all the past hurts, all the past injustices, pains, wounds, and they start acting up. But the contact point in this chain reaction of all the past hurts aching and acting up, the contact point is the present image that I have of myself. Don't take my word for it. You have to look at this. Find out.
I'm a teacher, and I'm sure I have an image of myself as a teacher, but whether or not I do, I mean, I am a teacher certainly in the sense that that's what I do to make my living, and the way that a farmer is a farmer. I guess there are problems that have to do with self-image in any kind of occupation that one might have. One problem that I have is it possible to be a teacher in which this means that I'm not responsible for telling students what the truth is, because that's not the way I see what teaching is at all. But I'm responsible for teaching them what people have said that the truth is, and they have to learn it or show some kind of performance with regard to it in some kind of fashion. Is it possible to do that without helping to contribute to impressions of people about themselves that are false?
And you're putting this question not just to Toni, but to yourself, right?
Sure.
Yeah. First of all, starting with when you say I'm a teacher, that's what I do. A farmer plows and sows the field and harvests, and I'm a teacher, which means giving classes in philosophy and earning a living that way. Is one contributing with that to the stream of image making? It all depends, doesn't it? For oneself, first of all, for oneself, is one attached to the idea of being a teacher, philosophy teacher or a professor, whatever one's title may be. To question that and then not just immediately say, no, I'm not, because one has the image of not being attached to the image. You can have the image of being free of attachment to being a teacher. But this question calls for direct looking as people come up to you maybe with admiring eyes, saying, I have always admired philosophy teachers. Now, what happens at this moment? Very similar to what you were talking about. Is there immediately a sort of a fix, a boost to the energy? Maybe it happens so fast, but can it seem just as fast as it happens? So that one will be done with it and not go on with reveling in the idea of being a teacher and being admired by students for being that. And with this reveling in the thought and image, one isn't here. There's no presence. So that is to be observed. Now the other...
Well, one of the things that does bother me, I guess, is seeing my students do things that they don't want to do, or not be able to do things that they should be able to do, given other aspects of their academic abilities. But they tie themselves up into knots. And I think this right now causes me anxiety, or causes me to feel like there ought to be something I should be able to do about this, or if there isn't, it's just a shame that it is a concern, I guess.
Do you have a prejudice against this, a student tying herself or himself up into knots, or do you want to understand what's going on there? And do you tie yourself into knots too?
Well, two questions. I probably do tie myself into knots, but with regard to the other person, what I want is for this person or for these people not to tie themselves into knots.
And we've tried that for hundreds and thousands of years, trying to have people do something that is in accordance with what I want them to be. But it hasn't worked. It doesn't work. We may have edicts and moral and ethical, precepts and ideas, and learn them, teach them, and say act in accordance to this moral or ethical precept, but we don't do it, we transgress it. And I'm wondering whether it is because we don't understand ourselves fundamentally, basically, deeply. We've always tried to change ourselves from the outside, or from the surface of ideas of how we should be. And do we understand how we function? What is this tying oneself into a knot? What is it all about? How does it happen? Can one watch it in the process, in oneself as well as in the student? Because we're not different in this respect from each other. We're all beset with inner conflicts and contradictions and confusion, meaning I want to be different, but I don't want to be the way I am. But I don't know how to be different. And I don't even know how I am. What am I? And that doesn't take teacher or student, that takes a human being to begin to look and question. in relationship and alone. Not according to any outline, not according to any method, but looking at this moment, what is happening. If there's tremendous upset or feeling tied in knots, can one sit, walk, work, or whatever one is doing with that knot, giving that knot space to reveal itself from moment to moment. What is it? If I don't prejudge it, I don't want to get rid of it and therefore already keep it under control or hemmed in on all sides.
That, Toni, isn't to say that if you're in a position in a school where you can see something in the structure and curriculum that is difficult or burdening to people, that you can't change that either.
Well, you can try.
Yeah.
You may find the whole faculty against you. Or you may find that, other people have seen this too and they want to discuss it. Can there be some change? But before we try to change something, let's understand what it is that we're trying to change. What is really going on without prejudice. And draw on people to give their own feelings and views so that there's a lot of input to look. I'm not saying you're doing this, but if you tell students you must not be the way you are, you must be like what Plato said, or Socrates said, or Hegel said, or whoever said, then you're contributing images. I'm not saying you're doing that. That was very gross, but we can do it on subtler levels.
I have a question about compassion, and that is, I've asked you before related questions about this, and it also has to do with the goal. If there is some kind of a goal that this work of attending to ourselves is directed toward, and usually the response is no. There's no goal. There's no payoff for this. At the same time, with this realization, whatever we want to call it, is always said to come compassion and freedom. Now, again, to relate this to my own experience, it seems to me that a teacher is someone who should have compassion for his or her students, especially because there seems to be sort of a bond of some sort there. And this is the problem that I see myself having. The problem that I see myself having is if I have students who cannot function as they want to function. It's not that I'm telling them it doesn't have to do with how they should act, how their morality, but whether they can function to do this learning experience, to do this philosophy, to know more philosophy, to be able to internalize it or to be more sophisticated. If they can't, not because they don't have the ability, but because they can't get themselves to do things they themselves want to do, that is when I find myself confused about how to act.
I would be too.
What should I do? Tell them what to do? You say, well, that doesn't seem right.
Well, does it work? Can you
No.
tell somebody what to do? You said internalize philosophical, how did you put it? Internalize a philosophical maxim? Or what?
Yes, in other words, if a student is a philosophy major, a student comes into a course saying, I want to learn these things, I think it would be important to know these things, important in terms of my own judging of how I'm going to live my life. But that the student doesn't carry through with that. That student isn't able to get himself or herself to do this work. There are other things in the person's life that keep them from doing that. And so they, to one degree or another, fail. They may not fail the course, but they don't live up to what they wanted to live up to.
And why is that so? Is that outside of the field of philosophy?
Sure.
I don't think so. You may say, well, strictly speaking, I'm not, as a philosophy teacher, I am not concerned with the problems that the students have which prevent them from opening up to what philosophy is all about. Why do we separate? Maybe this is our fundamental problem. Separate everything into compartments. Personal problems, the way we live, philosophy classes, and so forth and so on. Of course, you have the assumption that if a student would understand the philosophy, a beautiful philosophy of a great philosopher, then that student would live a better life?
Maybe not, but that student would have something in his or her life that he or she could make use of.
But that's an assumption.
Yes, but they've told me that.
Who?
That the students have said, I think that this would probably be the case.
That one has something to think about, to fall back on in one's thoughts and knowledge. At a moment of depression, think about the philosophy that one has learned or understood intellectually. But what is the depression? What is the resistance? What is the inability to listen without prejudice? What's preventing this listening without prejudice? You can say it's too bad it isn't there, but why isn't it there? And is it there in oneself? Because unless this listening is there, there is no compassion. There's only thought of what I ought to do, what the student ought to do, to be happy, to be better. Why are we so caught up, so closed up, so unable to listen to each other? And you say this would take me out of the realm that I am hired to teach.
Well, I don't mind that. In other words,
do you have freedom?
Yes.
There?
In other words, as a teacher, I don't feel I have a wider range than just to present philosophy, but I don't know what to do. And I don't know if I should do anything. And I see these students who are not succeeding in terms of what they want to do with their lives, or say that what they want to do with their lives. They're sort of carving a path for themselves that they seem to want to walk on, but that's the way they're going to walk, it seems likely. And I don't know what to do about it. And of course, then I feel guilty because if I were a better teacher, this wouldn't happen. These kinds of things can happen too. That also happens.
The way you talk about the students sort of gives the feeling, I may be wrong, these people out there, these students there, as separate from me. can there be a shift of the plates? A shift of the plate is an earthquake. In not seeing the people in the philosophy class as those students, but as human beings like myself. And I have to begin to understand what's going on, because I see my teaching goes nowhere. I'm exaggerating, maybe. It is not doing what I would like it's doing, because there seems to be blockages and all kinds of stuff. What is going on? And what is going on in myself as I tie myself into knots, feeling guilty over not doing something that I think I ought to do or could do if. What's going on in the mind and body? Here and there, not just out there, but we're a coupled system. Let's say the cyberneticians, they call us a coupled system. We all are coupled with each other in our input and output, in our relationship, in our thoughts and feelings. But this requires great inquiry into oneself, in one's quandary or dilemma. Meditative inquiry. Maybe together with the students, maybe they're into it. I'm using the word students, but in working here, it used to be at Zen centers, it's called, the person who does what I'm doing here is called a teacher, and the people who are sitting like you're sitting are called the students. These words are abominations to me, because they already separate us from each other. And you could say, well, you're just saying it, but you're still sitting on this thing. Yes, so I am, and there is a microphone, but the hell with it. There's a reason for it. Some people want a tape. À la bonne heure, let them have a tape. But here and working together, I don't see you as somebody separate from me. Because I'm looking within, too. We share the same problems if we dwell in this human consciousness, which we do most of the time, thinking, wanting, fearing, prejudging, and the dilemmas and conflicts that grow out of all of that. I want to understand that as it happens each moment. And if you're interested too, then we'll do it together. We'll join hands, as it were. And out of this thing may come something that is labeled compassion, but when that operates, you're not even aware that you're compassionate. It just operates in not prejudging each other, but listening to each other without prejudice. And the play, the sound.
We could break for some tea now.